The last entry in Thomas Whitmore's logbook, dated November 18, 1881, contains only 7 words written in a hand so unsteady they slope downward across the page. Something is answering back to the wire. Below that someone, perhaps Whitmore himself, perhaps another lineman who found the book later, had drawn a single vertical line, repeated 23 times across the width of the page. Nothing more. The logbook was discovered in April of 1882, tucked inside the stove of an abandoned telegraph relay station 17 miles north of Medicine Bow, Wyoming Territory. The stove was cold. It had been cold for months. By the time the Western Union superintendent arrived to investigate why Station 7 had gone silent, the winter snow had melted enough to reveal the condition of the lines. For 3 miles in either direction, the telegraph poles stood intact, the wires still strung between them, humming faintly in the wind. But every glass insulator had been removed, not broken, removed, and placed in careful rows along the ground beneath each pole, as though someone had spent hours in the freezing dark, climbing each post to unscrew them one by one. The wire itself was unmarked. Functional. When tested from the nearest operational station, it carried current perfectly. No one ever determined who removed the insulators, or why. Thomas Whitmore was never seen again. The year 1881 found the Wyoming Territory in a state of uncomfortable adolescence. The railroad had brought order and commerce to the southern corridor, stringing towns like beads along the Union Pacific Line, but the land between those towns remained as it had been for centuries, endless, wind-scraped, and profoundly indifferent to human presence. Telegraph lines had followed the railroad, creating a web of communication that connected the territory to the wider nation, but maintaining those lines required men willing to live in isolation, often for weeks at a time, in small relay stations positioned every 15 to 20 miles along the route. These stations were Spartan structures, usually a single room with a stove, a cot, a table, and the telegraph equipment itself. The linemen who staffed them were a particular breed. Men comfortable with silence, capable of weathering the crushing emptiness of the high plains winter, and skilled enough to repair breaks in the line when ice storms or high winds brought the wire down. They worked in rotating shifts, sometimes alone, sometimes in pairs, receiving supplies and mail every 2 weeks if weather permitted. Station 7 sat in one of the lonelier stretches of the route, positioned on a slight rise overlooking a shallow creek that ran dry most of the year. The nearest town, Medicine Bow, was a day's ride south. To the north, nothing but sage and grass for 30 miles until you reached the next station. The building itself was unremarkable. Rough timber, a tar paper roof, one window facing east. The telegraph poles marched away from it in both directions, their crossbars and wire creating a geometry that seemed almost alien against the organic swell of the landscape. Thomas Whitmore had been assigned to Station 7 in September of 1881, replacing a man named Kellerman who had requested transfer after only 6 weeks. The official reason given was family illness back east, but several people in Medicine Bow remembered Kellerman differently when asked about it later. The postmaster, a careful man named Denton, recalled that Kellerman had come through town in late August looking poorly rested, and had sent a telegram to the Western Union office in Cheyenne that Denton, in the course of his duties, had unavoidably seen. It contained only a request for immediate reassignment, followed by the words, "Station unsuitable for habitation." When pressed, Kellerman had offered no specifics. He took the first eastbound train and did not look back. Whitmore was older than most linemen, nearly 40, with experience on lines in Nebraska and Dakota Territory. His letters to his sister in Omaha during his first month at Station 7 were routine, even cheerful. He described the work as straightforward. The solitude as welcome. He mentioned the wind frequently, how constant it was, how it found every gap in walls, how at night it made the telegraph wires sing in a low, steady tone that he found oddly companionable. "It is like living with a piano string stretched across the world," he wrote in early October. "You grow accustomed to its voice." The station received regular traffic, mostly commercial messages relayed between Cheyenne and the stations farther west. Whitmore's job was to receive these transmissions, log them, and send them onward. At night, the line typically went quiet, the distant operators signing off as the hour grew late, leaving Whitmore alone with the lamp, his books, and the sound of the wind. It was in the first week of November that his letters began to change in character. "The line has been active at unusual hours," Whitmore wrote to his sister on November 4th. "Not messages precisely, but clicks and stammers coming through after midnight, when no operator should be on duty at either end of my section. I have checked the log carefully. The patterns are irregular, not like the rhythm of speech in Morse. More like someone testing the key, or perhaps interference from atmospheric conditions. I have reported it, but received no reply of concern. It may be nothing." His next letter, dated November 9th, was longer. "The night transmissions have continued. I hesitate to call them transmissions, truly, as they do not resolve into language. Last evening I sat at the receiver from midnight until nearly 3, transcribing what came through. I have enclosed a page for your curiosity, though I confess it makes little sense to me. The pattern repeats, but not precisely, always slight variations, as if whoever is sending lacks consistency of hand. I have contacted Station 6 to the south and Station 8 to the north. Neither reports sending anything during those hours. Station 8's operator, a young man named Ferris, suggested it might be echo or loopback, some quirk of the wire carrying a signal back on itself. I am not convinced. Echo does not last for 3 hours. The enclosed page, which his sister preserved and which still exists in a private collection in Nebraska, shows lines of transcribed Morse code that indeed form no recognizable words in English. However, several researchers have noted that the rhythm of the dots and dashes, when read aloud as a pattern rather than language, resembles the cadence of breathing, a long draw, a pause, a short release. On November 11th, Whitmore sent a telegram to the Western Union office in Cheyenne. The message was logged and preserved. "Request inspection station 7 line. Unauthorized signals nightly. No source identified. Possible equipment fault." The reply came the same day. "Inspection scheduled spring. Monitor and report malfunction if service interrupted." Whitmore's logbook entries, which were maintained separately from his personal letters, became more detailed in the days following. Each night, he noted the time the irregular signals began, their duration, and their general character. The times varied, sometimes beginning as early as 10 o'clock, sometimes not until well past midnight, but they always lasted for hours, and they always ended abruptly mid-pattern, as though whoever was sending had simply stopped without signing off. On November 13th, he wrote, "Attempted to respond tonight. When the pattern began at 11:20, I sent a standard query. Identify station. The line went silent for approximately 4 minutes. Then the pattern resumed, unchanged. On November 14th, same result. Sent, who is sending? Silence, then resumption. It does not seem to hear me, or chooses not to answer. On November 15th, it answered. The entry for that night is longer, the handwriting still controlled but pressed harder into the page, the ink darker. The pattern began at 10:45. I let it continue for some time, transcribing as usual, and at 11:30 I sent, "Identify yourself." The line went silent. I waited. At 11:33, the sound began again, but different, slower, more deliberate. I transcribed carefully. It sent, Station 7. I stared at this for some time. I sent, "This is Station 7. Who are you?" Another silence, nearly 5 minutes. Then Station 7. I tried once more. "You are not Station 7. I am Station 7. The reply came faster this time. "Yes." I did not send again. The pattern continued for another hour in the old rhythm, as if the exchange had not occurred. I have checked every connection. The equipment is sound. I do not know where this is coming from. I do not know what it means by answering as I do. The next supply delivery was not due until November 22nd, but Whitmore rode to Medicine Bow on the morning of November 16th, leaving the station unattended, a violation of his contract, but one he apparently felt necessary. He went directly to the telegraph office and spoke with the operator there, a man named Sturgis, who later recounted the conversation to the superintendent. According to Sturgis, Whitmore was calm but insistent. He wanted to know if there were any other stations on the line, unofficial ones, abandoned ones, perhaps left over from earlier construction. Sturgis told him no. The line was accounted for end to end. Whitmore asked if anyone else had access to the wire, any way for someone to tap in without being detected. Sturgis explained that while theoretically possible, it would require equipment and knowledge, and would likely cause a noticeable drop in signal strength. He asked me if a message could come from nowhere. Sturgis said, not from another station, but from the wire itself. I told him that was nonsense. That wire is just copper. It only carries what we send through it. He thanked me and left. He looked tired. Whitmore returned to Station 7 that afternoon. His logbook confirms his arrival at 4:15 p.m. That evening, he did something he had not done before. He disconnected the sounder, the device that translated incoming electrical pulses into audible clicks. He wrote in the log, "Equipment test. Receiver disabled to isolate source of signal." With the sounder disconnected, the station would be unable to receive any messages, but the telegraph key remained functional, meaning Whitmore could still send. More importantly, the sounder's mechanical arm, even when disconnected, could still move if a strong enough current came through. It simply wouldn't be grounded to click audibly against its anvil. At 11:08 that night, Whitmore recorded, "Sounder arm moving, device not connected, current present online, but not from any station I can identify. Arm movement matches previous pattern rhythm." He watched the disconnected device for 3 hours, noting that the arm's motion was consistent, deliberate, and continued without pause. At 2:15 a.m., he reconnected the sounder. The clicks resumed immediately, and he transcribed, "Are you there?" Whitmore did not record his emotional state in the log, but his hand must have been steady enough, because he sent back, "Yes. Where are you?" The reply, "Station 7. "I am at Station 7, he sent. "Where are you?" A pause and, "Station 7. "Can you hear me?" Whitmore wrote in the margin of the log, "It is asking if I can hear it," as if it has been trying to reach someone. He sent, "I hear you. Who is this?" The reply came in fragments, separated by long pauses, as if each word required great effort. Whitmore, Station 7, November. He sent nothing for several minutes, according to his notes. Then, "I am Whitmore. Who are you?" The line went silent until dawn. In the log, he wrote only, "No further contact. Stove has gone cold. I did not notice." For 2 nights, the line was quiet. Whitmore's log entries are brief, factual, almost hopeful. No irregular signals. Standard traffic only. He busied himself with maintenance, oiling the equipment, rechinking gaps in the walls, splitting wood for the stove. His letter to his sister, dated November 19th, reflects a man trying to reassure himself. "I believe the trouble has passed." Perhaps it was, as suggested, some fault in the wire or the ground connection, now resolved by the freeze. The nights are very cold now, and the creek bed has iced over. Everything is still. I am well. But on November 20th, the pattern returned. It began earlier than usual, just after 9 o'clock, and this time it was not the hesitant, probing rhythm of before. The clicks came fast, almost frantic, and when Whitmore transcribed them, they repeated a single phrase over and over, "Listen, listen, listen, listen." He sent, "I am listening." The reply, "Do you hear it?" "Hear what?" Whitmore sent, "The wire. Listen to the wire." Whitmore wrote in his log, "I do not understand what it wants me to hear. The wire sounds as it always does. The wind passes through it, a low hum, steady. I have listened to this for months. He sent, "I hear only wind." The response was longer, broken into fragments with pauses between, as though the sender struggled to form a message. Not wind. Something in the wire. It moves through. Can you hear it moving? Whitmore stepped outside. He recorded this clearly. Went to the nearest pole, 20 yards south of the station. Placed hand on wire. Vibration present, consistent with wind tension. No anomaly detected. When he returned inside, the sound was clicking again, and he transcribed, "IT knows you are there." He sent, with what one imagines was considerable unease. What knows? The thing in the wire. Whitmore's next entry is the longest single passage in the logbook, written in a hand that remained controlled but showed the first signs of haste. The letters slightly compressed, the lines closer together. I do not know what to make of this. I have tried to approach it rationally. If someone is attempting to unsettle me, they are succeeding. But to what purpose? The nearest person is Ferris at Station 8, 30 miles north, and I cannot imagine him capable of this, nor can I imagine how he would manage it technically. If the wire is carrying some genuine signal, some person truly in distress or confusion, then I am bound to help. But I do not know how to help someone who claims to be me, who claims to be here, who speaks of things in the wire as if the wire itself were inhabited. I have done the only thing I can think to do. I have asked it directly. He had sent, "If you are in trouble, tell me where you are. I will send help." The reply, "I am at Station 7. I have been here for days. I cannot leave." "Why can you not leave?" Whitmore sent. "IT is in the wire. If I leave, IT will follow." Whitmore wrote, "I asked what it was." The reply was a single word, repeated 20 or more times until I stopped transcribing. Listening, 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 listening. He disconnected the sounder at 3:40 a.m. and did not reconnect it. The morning of November 21st was clear and bitterly cold, the kind of cold that makes the air feel thin and the distances look closer than they are. Whitmore's log entry is dated but contains only one line. Will ride to Station 8 to confer with Ferris. Returning before dark. He never made that ride. What happened instead is recorded in a series of notes written on loose pages, found tucked into the back of the logbook, undated but clearly written in sequence, presumably over the course of that day and the night that followed. The handwriting begins steady and deteriorates. The first note, "I saddled the horse and was leading him from the lean-to when I noticed the wire. The section running north from the station. It was moving, not swaying in the wind. The wind was calm. The wire was vibrating, a tight, rapid oscillation, like a plucked string. I could hear it from 30 feet away, a high, thin sound. I approached the nearest pole, and the vibration stopped the moment I touched the wire. The metal was warm, not sun-warm, warm like skin." The second note, "I returned to the station. The sounder was clicking. I had left it disconnected. I know I left it disconnected. The arm was moving, and the sound was very fast. Too fast to transcribe, but I did not need to transcribe it because it was not code. It was simply noise, a continuous frantic clatter, and underneath it, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear, I did not want to write this, but I must write it, you could almost hear the rhythm of speech, as if someone were trying to talk through the clicks, try to form words with a mechanism not meant for words." The third note, the handwriting now slightly uneven. I reconnected it properly, thinking perhaps a loose connection was causing the malfunction. The moment I tightened the final screw, it stopped clicking and sent very slowly, very clearly, "Do not go outside." I sent, "Why not? IT is on the wire now. It knows where you are." I went to the window. All 23 poles visible from the station, stretching south toward Medicine Bow. Every glass insulator was gone. I know they were there this morning. I checked the line 2 days ago, and every insulator was intact. Now every pole stood bare, the wire resting directly against the wood, and I could see, even from this distance, that the wire was moving again, that slow, deliberate oscillation, running away from pole to pole, coming toward the station. The fourth note is longer, written in sections, suggesting Whitmore pause frequently. I barred the door. I do not know what I am barring against. The wire cannot enter. The wire is outside, strung on poles, inert copper. But I watched it move. I watched the wave travel down the line. And when it reached the pole nearest the station, the pole 15 feet from the east window, the wire went still, and the sounder began clicking again. "Let me in," it sent. I did not reply. "Whitmore, let me in. It is cold." I sent, "Who are you?" The reply was my name, over and over. Whitmore, Whitmore, Whitmore. As if it were insisting. As if it were trying to convince me. I asked it what it wanted. The sounder went silent for a long time. Then, I want to stop listening. Listening to what? I sent. To everything. The wire hears everything. Every message, every word, every voice that has ever passed through. They do not leave. They stay in the wire. I can hear them all at once. I want to stop. I do not know what this means. I do not know if it means anything. But I can hear the wire now, even from inside, even through the walls. It is humming, not the wind hum. Something else. A low vibration that makes my teeth ache. The fifth note, the writing now compressed and leaning. It has been at the window. I did not see it. I refuse to say I saw it. But something was at the window, blocking the light, and the glass fogged as if from breath, and in the fog, letters appeared, drawn by something on the other side. I am you. I close the shutters. The sounder continues. It is sending constantly now, no pauses, a continuous stream of code. I have transcribed parts of it. It is every message I have ever sent from this station, repeated back to me word for word, in sequence, from my first day here in September to this morning. My own words returned, as if it has been recording everything. The sixth note, written very small, the letters cramped. The wire is against the window. I can hear it scraping the glass. Wire does not move on its own. Wire does not scrape. But I hear it, a light persistent scratching, and the sounder sends, "Please." It hurts to listen. Let me stop. I have pulled the stove close to the door. I have loaded my rifle. Though I do not know what I would shoot. The wire? The air? The sound? The sounder clicks and clicks, and I cannot make it stop because if I disconnect it, it clicks anyway. I have seen it click disconnected, and I think it would click even if I smashed it to pieces, because the sound is not coming from the sounder anymore. It is coming from everywhere, from the walls, from the stovepipe, from the nails and the floorboards. Everything metal is vibrating. Everything is carrying it. The seventh note, barely legible. It says it is me. It says, it has always been me. It says I am the one in the wire, that I have been in the wire since I arrived, that the person in this station is the echo, the residue, the thing that should not still be here. It says I must understand this. It says the wire does not let go. It says, the note ends mid-sentence. The last page in the logbook is the page with the 23 lines. Below Whitmore's final 7-word entry. Something is answering back to the wire. The vertical marks are drawn with great precision, evenly spaced, identical in length. They look like a tally. They look like fence posts. They look like telegraph poles. The superintendent's report, filed in March of 1882, is dry and bureaucratic. It notes the abandoned station, the removed insulators, the functional wire. It notes the logbook's contents as erratic, and suggests that Whitmore suffered some form of nervous collapse brought on by isolation. It recommends that Station 7 be permanently staffed with 2 men rather than 1. This recommendation was never implemented. Station 7 was shuttered in April of 1882, and the line rerouted to bypass it. The building stood empty for 8 years before being dismantled for lumber. Ferris, the operator at Station 8, was interviewed as part of the investigation. He reported that he had received no messages from Whitmore after November 15th, and that the line through Station 7 had appeared to function normally until it went completely silent on the night of November 21st. He noted one oddity. On the night of the 21st, he had attempted to send a routine message south and received, instead of the expected relay, a return signal that he transcribed as Station 7, Station 7, Station 7, repeating until he stopped listening. When asked if he had sent anyone to check on Whitmore, Ferris said he had intended to, but the weather had turned and the snow had made travel impossible. By the time the route was passable again, the station was already under investigation. No grave was ever located for Thomas Whitmore. His sister received his final letters and the logbook from the Western Union office, with a brief note of condolence and no explanation. She kept them until her own death in 1903, after which they passed through 2 estate sales before being acquired by a collector of Western Americana. Several linemen who worked the route in later years, after Station 7 was closed, reported oddities in that section of wire. A man named Carmichael, who repaired a break in the line in 1885, told a newspaper in Laramie that when he climbed the pole to splice the wire, he heard a sound like Morse code, but too fast to read, like someone sending in a panic. He attributed it to wind or imagination. Another lineman, whose name was not recorded, reportedly refused to work that section after dark, claiming the wire talked to itself. In 1889, the entire line was upgraded, and the old wire was removed and sold as scrap. No further reports of unusual activity were filed. There are places in the historical record where silence speaks more clearly than words. Station 7 is one of those places. The documents exist, the logbook, the letters, the reports, but they do not explain. They only describe. And what they describe is a man alone in a small room on the Wyoming plains, listening to a wire that perhaps listened back. The question is not whether something was in the wire. The question is what the wire becomes when it carries voices for long enough, whether it remembers, whether it holds, whether the boundary between message and messenger dissolves after enough words have traveled through. Thomas Whitmore believed, by the end, that he was speaking to himself, that the wire had somehow caught him, held him, and was replaying him back. If that is madness, it is a very specific madness, and it is strange that the wire behaved so strangely at the same time. The insulators were never found. Not in the station, not along the route, not anywhere. 23 poles, 23 insulators, removed in a single night by someone who climbed each pole in the freezing dark for no reason anyone could determine. Unless the reason was to let the wire touch the wood directly, to ground it, to give it a path. The line is gone now. The poles are gone. Station 7 is gone. But copper does not forget, and voices do not fade. They only travel farther, growing fainter, until they're too faint to hear but not too faint to be there, still moving through the dark, still asking, over and over, can you hear me? Are you listening? Are you there? And somewhere in the space between the question and the answer, the wire hums, and the hum sounds almost like a name, repeated softly, as if trying to remember who it used to be.